We lock our doors at night. We install security cameras. We teach our children not to talk to strangers. But what happens when the greatest threat doesn't come from the faceless criminal lurking in the shadows, but from the person living right next door? Every day we wave hello to our neighbors. We share pleasantries over the fence, borrow cups of sugar, discuss the weather. We see them walking their dogs, mowing their lawns, taking out their trash. They seem normal, ordinary, safe. But behind those familiar faces and friendly smiles, darkness can hide. The person who helps you carry groceries might be harboring unspeakable secrets. The family that hosts summer barbecues could be concealing a nightmare within their walls. The quiet individual who keeps to themselves might be planning something unthinkable. This isn't fiction. These aren't Hollywood horror stories designed to thrill and entertain. These are real events that shattered real communities, destroyed real families, and turned ordinary streets into crime scenes that would haunt investigators for years. From seemingly perfect suburbs to tight-knit rural communities, no neighborhood is immune. The statistics are chilling. Studies show that perpetrators of violent crimes often live within a mile of their victims. Your neighbor isn't just a geographical coincidence. They're statistically more likely to know details about your life, your routine, your vulnerabilities. In this series, we'll take you inside some of the most shocking cases where neighbors became criminals, where familiar faces became suspects, and where the illusion of safety was shattered forever. We'll hear from survivors, speak with investigators, and examine the warning signs that were missed, or worse, ignored. Because the most terrifying truth is this: evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it lives next door, waters its garden, and waves hello every morning. Welcome to Real Neighbors, Real Crimes, Real Nightmares. The American dream has always included a vision of the perfect neighborhood, tree-lined streets where children play safely, where everyone knows everyone, where you can leave your door unlocked and sleep soundly at night. We're conditioned from childhood to believe that home is our sanctuary, our safe haven from the dangers of the outside world. But what the dream never prepared us for was the possibility that danger might not come from outside at all, that the person threatening our safety might not be a stranger in a dark alley, but someone we recognize, someone we trust, someone who lives just beyond our property line. Neighborhood crimes represent a unique category of criminal behavior that strikes at the heart of our most fundamental assumptions about safety and community. Unlike random acts of violence or crimes of opportunity, these cases involve a betrayal of proximity, a violation of the unspoken social contract that binds communities together. When your neighbor becomes your perpetrator, every assumption you've made about your safety crumbles. Psychologists have long studied the phenomenon of neighbor-perpetrated crimes, and their findings are disturbing. Proximity breeds familiarity, and familiarity can breed either trust or obsession. Neighbors have unprecedented access to information about our lives. They know when we leave for work, when we return, when we go on vacation. They can observe our habits, our relationships, our vulnerabilities. They can hear through walls, see through windows, and construct detailed profiles of our daily existence without ever raising suspicion. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, a forensic psychologist who has worked on numerous cases involving neighbor-perpetrated crimes, explains, the neighbor criminal occupies a unique position in the victim's life. They're close enough to gather intelligence but distant enough to maintain plausible deniability. They can monitor without being obvious, escalate without immediate detection, and often manipulate the victim's trust in ways that complete strangers cannot. The cases we'll examine in this series span decades and cross geographical boundaries, but they share common threads. In many instances, there were warning signs, behavioral changes, unusual interest in victims' activities, boundary violations that started small and escalated. Sometimes these signs were noticed but dismissed as quirky or eccentric behavior. After all, we're taught to be tolerant of our neighbors, to respect differences, to mind our own business. But where is the line between respecting privacy and ignoring red flags? Between being judgmental and being vigilant? Between paranoia and prudent caution? These are questions that survivors and investigators grapple with long after the crimes have been solved and the perpetrators imprisoned. This series will take you inside 7 distinct cases, each illustrating different aspects of how neighbors can transform from familiar faces into figures of terror. We'll meet survivors who still live with the psychological scars of betrayal. We'll speak with detectives who had to navigate the complex dynamics of investigating someone integrated into the fabric of a community. We'll hear from criminal psychologists about the profiles and patterns that emerge in these cases. We'll explore cases of stalking that turned deadly, thefts that escalated into violence, obsessions that culminated in murder, and long-hidden secrets that shocked entire towns when they finally came to light. Some of these perpetrators were caught quickly. Others evaded justice for years while continuing to live ordinary lives in plain sight. But this series isn't designed merely to frighten you or make you suspicious of everyone around you. Rather, it's intended to educate, to illuminate the warning signs that communities often miss, and to honor the memories of victims who deserve more than to become statistics. We'll also examine the aftermath, how communities rebuild trust after such violations, how survivors reclaim their sense of safety, and how neighborhoods implement changes to prevent future tragedies. Understanding these cases requires us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, about the masks people wear, and about our own potential complicity in maintaining those masks through willful blindness or social pressure to conform. The cases presented here have been thoroughly researched, drawing from court documents, police reports, interviews with those involved, and expert analysis. Names and identifying details have been changed in some instances to protect privacy, but the essential facts remain accurate and verified. As you journey through these stories, you may find yourself looking at your own neighborhood differently. You may question assumptions you've held for years. That's not paranoia, it's awareness. And awareness, as these cases will show, can be the difference between safety and tragedy. So let's begin this unsettling exploration. Let's look beyond the pleasant facades and examine what can lurk beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary neighborhoods. Let's understand how the familiar can become frightening, and how the person next door can become the subject of your worst nightmares. The Martinez family thought they had found paradise when they purchased their dream home in the quiet suburb of Westfield. The 4-bedroom colonial was everything they'd hoped for: good schools, friendly neighbors, and a sense of community they'd been seeking for years. Within weeks, Maria and Carlos Martinez had introduced themselves to everyone on the block. Their 2 children had made friends, and life seemed perfect. But perfection, as they would soon discover, was merely an illusion. It started innocuously enough. Letters began arriving at their home, addressed simply to the new family. The first letter welcomed them to the neighborhood but included odd details about the house's history that made Maria uneasy. The writer claimed to have watched the house for decades, describing themselves as the Watcher, appointed to oversee the property. Initially, the Martinezes assumed it was a strange but harmless prank by a longtime resident with too much time on their hands. But the letters continued, growing progressively more disturbing. The Watcher demonstrated intimate knowledge of the family's routines, describing which child slept in which bedroom, noting when Carlos left for work each morning, commenting on Maria's choice of curtains. Most chillingly, one letter asked, "Have the young blood found the secrets of the walls yet?" The language was archaic, unsettling, and suggested someone was actively surveilling their family. Police were contacted, but without explicit threats, there was little they could do. The letters contained no return address, were composed of cut-out magazine letters like something from a crime drama, and bore local postmarks. Handwriting analysis proved impossible. The Martinezes installed security cameras, changed their routines, and tried to maintain normalcy for their children, but the psychological toll was devastating. Investigators interviewed neighbors, analyzed the letters, and conducted surveillance, but the Watcher remained elusive. Some neighbors became suspects in the family's eyes. Others offered support, but couldn't provide answers. The case attracted media attention, transforming the Martinez's private nightmare into public spectacle. Property values on the street plummeted as the story spread. The question that haunted everyone was, who was the Watcher? Was it a previous owner unable to let go? A neighbor with a disturbed mind? Someone with a historical connection to the property? The letters suggested someone older, someone who had observed the house for generations, someone who believed they had a right, perhaps even a duty, to monitor whoever lived there. After months of terror, unable to feel safe in their dream home, the Martinez family made the heartbreaking decision to move. They had invested their life savings into the house but couldn't bear another day of wondering if they were being watched, if their children were safe, if the next letter would escalate to something worse. The Watcher had won through psychological warfare alone. To this day, the Watcher's identity remains unknown. The case remains open, a reminder that sometimes the most effective weapons aren't physical, but psychological. The Martinez's experience illustrates how a neighbor, or someone claiming that connection, can destroy lives without ever making direct contact, can violate safety through observation alone, and can transform a dream home into a nightmare through nothing more than words and implied surveillance. Apartment 4B had always been quiet. Its occupant, a middle-aged woman named Helen Morrison, kept to herself, rarely made noise, and seemed to live a life of deliberate invisibility. Her neighbors in the building barely knew her name, let alone any details about her life. In a busy urban apartment complex where walls are thin and lives overlap, Helen had somehow managed to become a ghost among the living. That invisibility, investigators would later discover, was calculated and concealing a horror beyond imagination. When Mrs. Chen in 4A began complaining about a persistent odor seeping through the shared wall, building management initially dismissed it as a plumbing issue. The smell intensified over weeks, described by residents as sickeningly sweet and utterly wrong. When maintenance workers finally gained access to Helen's apartment after she failed to respond to multiple notices, they discovered a scene that would haunt them forever. The quiet woman from 4B had been dead for 3 weeks, but she wasn't alone. In her bedroom closet, investigators found the remains of her husband, sealed in plastic and hidden for over 2 years. The investigation revealed a chilling narrative. Helen Morrison had killed her husband, Robert, during what appeared to be a domestic dispute. Rather than report it, seek help, or flee, she had methodically concealed the body and continued living in the apartment as if nothing had happened. For more than 2 years, she went to work, exchanged pleasantries with neighbors, collected mail, and maintained the appearance of normalcy, all while her husband's body decomposed mere feet from where she slept each night. Neighbors were devastated to learn they had been living adjacent to a crime scene for so long. Mrs. Chen, who shared a wall with the bedroom where Robert's body had been hidden, felt violated and traumatized. "I was right there," she told investigators. "Sleeping, eating, living my life, and he was there the whole time. How did I not know? How did none of us know?" The guilt experienced by neighbors who had interacted with Helen was profound. They replayed conversations, searching for clues they might have missed, signs that something was terribly wrong. Security footage and interviews painted a picture of Helen's double life. By day, she was a payroll clerk at a local manufacturing company, described by co-workers as punctual, quiet, and unremarkable. She explained her husband's absence by claiming he had left her for another woman, a story that garnered sympathy and explained away any questions about his disappearance. Friends and family were distant. Robert had been estranged from his relatives, and Helen had successfully isolated herself from anyone who might notice inconsistencies in her story. Forensic psychologists who examined the case noted that Helen displayed characteristics consistent with compartmentalization disorder, an extreme ability to separate traumatic events from daily functioning. She had created 2 realities, one in which she had killed her husband and lived with his body, and another in which she was simply a quiet woman living alone. The psychological mechanisms required to maintain such a division for 2 years fascinated and disturbed experts. The building's residents struggled with the aftermath. Some moved out immediately, unable to reconcile their memories of quiet Helen with the reality of what she had done. Others stayed but reported nightmares, hypervigilance, and difficulty trusting their perceptions. Support groups were formed for those affected, and the building management faced lawsuits from residents who claimed their safety and mental health had been compromised by the proximity to such horror. Helen Morrison eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, receiving a sentence of 25 years to life. During her sentencing, she showed little emotion, maintaining the same quiet demeanor that had allowed her to hide in plain sight for so long. Her case serves as a stark reminder that the most dangerous neighbors might be the ones we notice least, the ones who have perfected the art of invisibility, the ones who have learned that the best place to hide is in full view, behind a facade of normalcy and silence. From the outside, the Hendersons appeared to be the ideal American family. David Henderson was a successful real estate agent, his wife Jennifer, a devoted stay-at-home mother to their 3 children. Their home in suburban Denver was immaculate, their lawn perfectly manicured, their Christmas decorations the envy of the neighborhood. They hosted block parties, volunteered at the local school, and were active in their church. Neighbors considered them pillars of the community, exactly the kind of family you'd want living next door. That carefully crafted image made the truth when it finally emerged, all the more devastating. The unraveling began with a seemingly minor incident. The family's teenage daughter, Melissa, showed up at a neighbor's house at 2 a.m, barefoot and wearing only a nightgown, begging for help. She was hysterical, incoherent, and covered in bruises. When police arrived, Melissa told a story that shattered the neighborhood's perception of the Henderson family forever. For years, she and her siblings had been subjected to systematic abuse behind the closed doors of that perfect house. The immaculate home was a prison, and the perfect parents were monsters. The investigation revealed layers of horror that had been hidden by the family's pristine public image. David and Jennifer Henderson had created an elaborate system of control and abuse that included physical punishment for minor infractions, prolonged isolation, food deprivation, and psychological torture. The children were homeschooled, ostensibly to provide better education, but actually to limit their contact with mandatory reporters who might notice signs of abuse. When they did interact with others, they had been trained to present perfect behavior and deflect any questions about their home life. Neighbors were shocked and guilt-ridden. "We saw them all the time," said Patricia Wilkins, who lived 3 houses down. "The kids always seemed so well-behaved, so polite. We thought the Hendersons were amazing parents. How did we miss this? How did we not see?" Several neighbors recalled moments that, in retrospect, seemed significant. The children's excessive politeness, their reluctance to make eye contact, the way they seemed to stiffen when their parents approached. But these signs had been interpreted as evidence of good discipline rather than indicators of abuse. One particularly disturbing revelation was that neighbors had occasionally heard screaming from the Henderson home, but had dismissed it as normal family arguments or disciplinary measures. In a culture that values privacy and non-interference in parenting, the threshold for intervention had been set too high. The Hendersons had exploited social norms that discourage meddling in other families' affairs, using privacy as a shield for their crimes. The oldest son, Thomas, testified during the trial about the psychological manipulation his parents employed. They had convinced the children that the abuse was normal, that all families functioned this way, and that revealing what happened at home would result in the family being separated and the children being placed in far worse situations. The Hendersons had also presented themselves as victims when confronted with any questions, claiming they were being unfairly judged by people who didn't understand their parenting philosophy. David and Jennifer Henderson were eventually convicted on multiple counts of child abuse, assault, and false imprisonment. They each received sentences of 30 years. Their children, removed from the home and placed with relatives, faced long roads to recovery. The case prompted the neighborhood to establish protocols for recognizing and reporting potential abuse. But the scars, both for the children and the community, remained. The Henderson case illustrates how predators can hide behind social capital, using community involvement and a polished image to deflect suspicion. It demonstrates the power of privacy norms to protect abusers and the difficulty communities face in balancing respect for family autonomy with child protection. Most haunting was the realization that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the perfect family next door, waving hello from their perfect lawn, hiding hell behind their perfect smile. Gregory Simmons loved his garden. Neighbors in the quiet cul-de-sac of Maplewood had grown accustomed to seeing him tending his flowers, pruning his bushes, and carefully maintaining his yard. What made Gregory unusual was his schedule. He did most of his gardening at night, often working under floodlights until 2 or 3 in the morning. "Night owl," he'd explain with a friendly shrug when questioned. "Can't sleep, might as well be productive." For 3 years, neighbors accepted this explanation, even joking about Gregory's nocturnal habits. They had no idea they were witnessing something far more sinister than insomnia. The truth began to surface when a neighboring family's dog, a golden retriever named Bailey, became obsessed with Gregory's yard. Bailey would strain at his leash during walks, pulling toward Gregory's fence and barking frantically at a particular section near the back corner. The dog's owners, the Patterson family, thought little of it initially. Dogs fixate on strange scents. But Bailey's behavior escalated to the point where he would whine and scratch at the fence separating the properties, sometimes for hours at a night. When the Pattersons mentioned Bailey's strange behavior to other neighbors, a pattern emerged. Several people reported that their pets showed similar reactions to Gregory's property. Mrs. Alvarez's cat refused to enter her backyard if Gregory was outside. The Thompsons' usually friendly terrier would growl whenever Gregory approached. Animals, investigators would later note, often detect what humans miss. The breakthrough came when a water main break required excavation on the street. Workers needed access to the utility lines that ran beneath Gregory's meticulously maintained garden. Gregory objected strenuously, claiming the disruption would destroy years of landscaping work. But the city had legal authority to proceed. What they found beneath the prize-winning roses changed everything. Buried in Gregory's garden were the remains of 3 women, all missing persons from the surrounding area spanning 7 years. The midnight gardening had been Gregory's method of maintaining the burial sites, ensuring no settling soil or unusual vegetation growth would attract attention. His careful tending, his obsessive maintenance, his nighttime routine, all had been strategies to conceal murder. The investigation revealed that Gregory Simmons was a serial killer who had specifically chosen his victims from dating websites, targeting women who lived alone and had limited social connections. He would establish relationships over weeks or months, eventually inviting them to his home for intimate dinners. None of his victims were ever seen alive again. Gregory would dispose of their vehicles in different cities, creating the impression that they had left town voluntarily. Neighbors were horrified to learn they had lived adjacent to a serial killer for years, walking past burial sites during casual conversations about weather and property values. The Pattersons, whose dog Bailey had tried to alert them to the horror, felt especially traumatized. "Bailey knew," Mr. Patterson said during a television interview. "He was trying to tell us, and we didn't listen. We thought he was just being a crazy dog." Forensic psychologists examined how Gregory had maintained such effective camouflage. His friendliness, his apparent openness about his unusual gardening schedule, his integration into neighborhood social events, all were calculated strategies to appear normal. By addressing the one aspect of his behavior that might seem odd, the nocturnal gardening, with a reasonable-sounding explanation, he had diffused suspicion before it could form. During the trial, prosecutors presented evidence of Gregory's meticulous planning. He had researched missing person investigation procedures, understood how to select victims who would be slow to be reported missing, and had created a system of disposal that exploited his neighbors' comfort with his presence. He had weaponized familiarity. Gregory Simmons received 3 consecutive life sentences without possibility of parole. His house was eventually demolished, unable to find a buyer despite a significant price reduction. The lot remained empty, a lawn that nobody wanted to tend. The neighborhood struggled with the aftermath. Property values declined, families moved away, and those who remained found it difficult to feel safe in their own backyards. The Midnight Gardener case demonstrates how predators can hide their crimes by incorporating them into everyday activities that neighbors observe but don't question. It shows how normalization of unusual behavior can provide cover for evil, and how the veneer of openness can be the most effective concealment of all. Nobody in the Riverside apartments could say a bad word about Marcus Chen. In the 3 years he had lived in Unit 12, he had become the building's unofficial handyman and good Samaritan. Leaky faucet? Marcus would fix it. Need someone to water your plants while on vacation? Marcus had a spare key and was happy to help. Locked out of your apartment? Marcus seemed to always be around with tools to help you get back in. The elderly residents especially appreciated him. He'd carry groceries, change light bulbs, and check in on those who lived alone. Building management considered him a model tenant. He was, by all accounts, exactly the kind of neighbor everyone hopes for. That's what made his arrest so incomprehensible. The investigation began not with Marcus, but with a series of seemingly unrelated thefts throughout the building. Over an 18-month period, residents had reported missing jewelry, cash, prescription medications, and small electronics. The thefts followed no obvious pattern. Different floors, different times, various types of items. Building management had upgraded security, changed locks, and posted warnings, but the thefts continued. Police involvement had yielded no suspects and the case had gone cold. What detectives didn't initially realize was that all the victims shared one common connection. They had all, at some point, given Marcus Chen access to their apartments. Some had given him spare keys for legitimate reasons. Others had called on him for repairs. Several elderly residents had added him to their authorized access list with building management. Marcus had used his reputation as the helpful neighbor to gain entry into dozens of apartments, gathering intelligence about residents' routines, valuables, and vulnerabilities. The case broke when Sarah Mitchell, a college student in Unit 8, installed a hidden camera in her apartment after becoming paranoid about the thefts. She had given Marcus a spare key months earlier when she needed someone to accept package deliveries while she was in class. The camera captured Marcus entering her apartment while she was away, methodically searching through drawers, photographing documents, and taking several items including cash and her grandmother's necklace. When police executed a search warrant on Marcus's apartment, they discovered a disturbing operation. He had created detailed files on nearly every resident in the building, their schedules, their valuables, copies of their keys, and notes on their security habits. He had photographs of the interiors of dozens of apartments. In some cases, he had installed his own hidden cameras in residents' homes during legitimate repair visits, allowing him to monitor their comings and goings. Most disturbingly, he had collected personal items from residents that had no monetary value: photographs, clothing, personal journals, souvenirs of his violations. The investigation revealed that Marcus was not only a thief, but had been conducting surveillance that bordered on stalking. He had focused particular attention on young women in the building, recording their schedules with obsessive detail, noting when they exercised, when they showered, when they went on dates. He had never physically assaulted anyone, but the psychological violation was profound. Women who had trusted him, who had considered him a friend, felt sick knowing he had cataloged intimate details of their lives. Marcus's motivations, explored during psychological evaluation, proved complex. He craved control and intimate knowledge of others' lives, compensating for profound loneliness and social inadequacy. The helpful neighbor persona had been a calculated strategy to gain access and trust, but it had also been his primary form of social connection. In his own disturbed logic, he felt he knew these people, that he was part of their lives through his surveillance and theft. The building's residents experienced collective trauma. Locks were changed, but the sense of violation remained. People who had trusted Marcus felt betrayed and foolish. The elderly residents who had depended on him felt especially vulnerable, wondering who they could trust if someone so seemingly kind could be a predator. Support groups were formed, and the building community, once characterized by neighborly cooperation, became insular and suspicious. Marcus Chen pleaded guilty to multiple counts of burglary, stalking, and wiretapping. He received 15 years in prison. During his sentencing, several victims read impact statements describing the psychological toll of his betrayal. Sarah Mitchell spoke about her inability to feel safe in her own apartment, how she checked locks obsessively, how she had developed anxiety that affected her academic performance and relationships. The helpful neighbor case serves as a cautionary tale about the weaponization of kindness and the exploitation of trust. It demonstrates how predators can use prosocial behavior as a cover for criminal activity, and how communities' natural desire for cooperation can create vulnerabilities. Most importantly, it reminds us that trustworthiness must be earned, not assumed based on surface-level helpfulness. For 15 years, the house at 347 Oakmont Drive had been a source of neighborhood speculation and concern. Its owner, Walter Briggs, was rarely seen, and when he was hostile to any attempts at conversation or connection. Mail piled up on his porch, his lawn grew wild, and the house itself seemed to be deteriorating around him. Neighbors had called city code enforcement multiple times, but Walter always did the minimum necessary to avoid penalties. He wanted to be left alone, and the neighborhood had largely obliged, gossiping about the strange recluse, but maintaining their distance. Nobody could have imagined what that distance allowed to flourish behind those grimy windows. The truth emerged on a sweltering July afternoon, when a postal worker delivering a package noticed an overwhelming smell emanating from the property and what appeared to be animals moving inside the house. When police arrived to conduct a welfare check, they encountered one of the most extreme cases of animal hoarding they had ever witnessed. Inside Walter's house were over 300 cats, living in conditions of unimaginable filth and neglect. The scene inside defied description. Dead animals in various stages of decomposition lay throughout the house. Ammonia levels from urine were so high that first responders needed breathing apparatus. Surviving cats were severely malnourished, many with untreated injuries and infections. The house itself had been destroyed, walls soaked with urine, floors buckled, structures compromised. It was less a home than a biological hazard zone, but the animal hoarding, as disturbing as it was, represented only part of the story. As investigators documented the scene, They discovered something that transformed a hoarding case into a criminal nightmare. In the basement, sealed off from the rest of the house, they found a teenage girl named Emma Dawson, reported missing from a town 50 miles away 3 years earlier. Emma's rescue and subsequent testimony revealed a horror that had unfolded while an entire neighborhood went about their daily lives mere yards away. Walter had abducted Emma when she was 14, holding her captive in his basement while pretending to be a concerned neighbor helping search for her. He had soundproofed the basement, installed industrial locks, and kept her isolated from any human contact except his own. The noise from the cats, neighbors would later realize, had likely masked any sounds of her captivity. The investigation into Walter's background revealed a pattern of escalating isolation and deteriorating mental health following his wife's death 15 years earlier. The animal hoarding had begun as an attempt to cope with loneliness, but had spiraled into obsession. Emma's abduction appeared to be an extension of his compulsive need to possess and control living things, a horrifying progression from collecting animals to capturing a human being. Neighbors were devastated by guilt. "We knew something was wrong with that house," said Jennifer Torres, who lived 2 doors down. "We could smell it, we could see the condition of the property, but we didn't push harder. We complained about the smell and the property values, but we didn't actually do anything that might have saved that girl 3 years of hell." Other neighbors echoed similar sentiments, wondering whether their desire to respect privacy and avoid confrontation had enabled Walter's crimes. The case raised difficult questions about community responsibility and intervention. At what point does respecting someone's privacy become complicity in harm? How do communities balance tolerance for eccentricity with responsibility to investigate genuine red flags? Walter's neighbors had noticed signs of a serious problem, but the social mechanisms for addressing those concerns had proven inadequate. Animal control removed and treated the surviving cats, though many had to be euthanized due to severe health conditions. The house was eventually demolished as structurally unsound and biohazardous. Emma Dawson, now 18 years old, faced a long journey toward recovery, working with therapists to process her trauma and reclaim her life. Walter Briggs was convicted of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and multiple counts of animal cruelty. He received 45 years to life. During proceedings, he showed little remorse, seeming unable to comprehend that he had done anything wrong. Psychological evaluations described profound personality disorders and a complete inability to empathize with the suffering he had caused. The neighborhood struggled with the aftermath. A community meeting was held to discuss warning signs and intervention protocols. Mental health resources were shared. But the fundamental question remained unanswered. How do you help someone who refuses all help? How do you investigate someone who wants to be invisible? The Recluse of Oakmont Drive had exploited everyone's desire to mind their own business, and the price had been paid by an innocent girl and hundreds of suffering animals. If you had asked anyone in Brookhaven about retired Judge Lawrence Pemberton, you would have heard nothing but praise. At 73, he was a pillar of the community, 40 years on the bench, countless civic awards, generous donations to local charities, and a reputation for fairness and wisdom. His home, a beautiful Victorian on Maple Street, was a neighborhood landmark where he hosted annual garden parties that everyone in the community hoped to attend. Children called him Judge Larry, and parents held him up as a role model. His neighbors felt safer knowing someone with his experience and judgment lived among them. The revelation of his true nature destroyed not just his reputation, but the community's faith in their own perceptions. The investigation began with a tip to the FBI's cybercrime unit. An international operation targeting child exploitation networks had identified an IP address associated with Judge Pemberton's home as a source of disturbing content. When federal agents executed a search warrant, they discovered that the respected judge had been producing and distributing child sexual abuse material for over a decade, using his position of trust and authority to access and exploit vulnerable children. The scope of his crimes was staggering. Judge Pemberton had volunteered as a youth mentor, hosted neighborhood children at his home, and used his reputation to gain parents' trust and access to their children. He had groomed multiple victims over the years, using his authority and respectability as shields against suspicion. When children had tried to report his behavior, they had been dismissed as confused or seeking attention. After all, who would believe such accusations against a respected judge? Forensic examination of his computers revealed thousands of images and videos, many featuring children from the neighborhood. Some parents recognized their own children in the material, discovering that activities they had thought were innocent, swimming parties at the judge's pool, private mentoring sessions in his home office, volunteer work at his charitable foundation, had been opportunities for exploitation and documentation. The neighborhood's response was one of collective shock and horror. Parents who had encouraged their children to spend time with Judge Pemberton felt crushing guilt. "He was a judge," sobbed Rebecca Manning, whose daughter had been victimized. "We thought, who would suspect? He represented law and justice. We trusted him completely. We encouraged our daughter to accept his mentoring. We gave him access to her because we thought he was safe." The investigation uncovered how expertly Judge Pemberton had weaponized his status. He had served on the Board of Child Protection Services, had presided over custody cases, had given speeches about juvenile justice reform. His involvement in these areas had provided both access to vulnerable children and insulation from suspicion. His professional reputation had made him, in effect, immune to the kind of scrutiny that might have exposed him years earlier. Several adults came forward during the investigation to report that Judge Pemberton had also victimized them during their childhoods decades earlier. They had never reported because they believed no one would take their word over a judge's. The statute of limitations had passed on those cases, but their testimony established a pattern of predatory behavior spanning 50 years. Pemberton had been exploiting his position since the beginning of his career. The community's recovery was complicated by the realization that they had not just failed to protect children, but had actively facilitated their abuse through misplaced trust. Support groups were formed for victims and their families. The judge's house, once a source of neighborhood pride, became a symbol of betrayal. It was eventually sold to a development company that demolished it and subdivided the lot. Lawrence Pemberton was convicted on multiple federal charges related to child exploitation. At sentencing, the 73-year-old showed no remorse, maintaining that his victims had been willing participants, that he had never used force. The judge, who had once dispensed justice from the bench, was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, effectively a life sentence given his age. The case prompted a broader examination of how communities vet those in positions of authority with children. Background checks previously thought sufficient proved inadequate.